The room held the letter's last period like a candle. Kyilsu exhaled first. She wrote better than all of us. He grinned helplessly. Even when she was telling us to behave. 2 pockets, Sujin repeated, almost to herself. Shame in a coat. Hunger without names. She wiped her eyes, then squared her shoulders. Let's finish the transfer. The clerk processed the donation while the siblings watched the screen fill with confirmation's account. Verified, recipient validated, purpose noted. The balance blinked to 0. It did not feel like loss. It felt like a door that could finally swing on its hinge. Would you like a printed receipt? The clerk asked. Yes, Yoon-jung said. 1 for us and 1 for the shelter. And 1 for her, Kyilsu added. We'll put it on the altar. She liked proof. They stepped back into the winter afternoon. The city reflected them in 100 windows figures, carrying an absence that had learned to walk. The wind rushed past with the smell of street food and traffic and the ordinary, and for a moment each of them felt lighter, as if the money had been a weight that belonged somewhere else. They delivered the receipt to Dian mother's home that evening. The director met them at the foyer, still in her apron, hands damp from washing rice. She accepted the folder with both palms, then hugged Yoon-jung in a gesture that bypassed permission. She said her children were the kind of people who finished work, the director said, tears making a warm mirror over her eyes. Today you proved her right. In the common room, toddlers played with plastic cars while a young woman soothed a newborn with the rhythm known only to beginners who have already become experts. When the director announced the donation, there was no applause, just a sudden quiet, like the house had taken a breath. The young women bowed. One whispered, "Thank you, Halmione," to the air. Sujin crouched beside the toy bin and began sorting crayons into neat rows. It was a silly, gorgeous thing to do, and soon the others joined, stacking books, wiping a table, moving a shelf that had never been squared to the wall. The work took 15 minutes and would be undone by morning. It was perfect. Before they left, the director pressed a photo into Yoon-jung's hand. Their mother stood in the very spot where they were now, holding a pot whose lid asked to be lifted. Jige, the director said, smiling. She said love needs salt. On the back of the photo, in pencil, remember to add water if anyone else shows up. Someone always will. At home that night, Ma Ong-ho laid their mother's archive letter on his kitchen table, as if it might teach the room a new etiquette. He read it again until the sentences became a tune. 2 pockets. Shame with a coat. Strangers whose names are late. He had spent years as accountant now. He felt drafted into a ledger kept by Weather and Hands. He took out a blank sheet and wrote, not to the court, not to the bank, but to the boy who had once watched him without asking. Sejun, I have nothing to buy you with, but I have something to open. He stopped there, because truth without ornaments is shy, as his mother had said, and tonight he had promised himself to learn her language. Outside, ice formed a thin skin over the sidewalk puddles. The city hardened and shone. He thought of how often he had chosen hardness instead of shine, control instead of coherence, secrecy instead of shelter. On the counter, the kettle clicked. He made tea for 2, because habits are rehearsals, and one day he intended to have someone at that table to accept a cup. Yoon-jung set the bank receipt on the home altar between the small porcelain cranes and the brass rice bowl. She tucked the cream envelope behind the photo frame so the gold thread peeked out like a bookmark. Then she lit a stick of incense. The smoke rose and did that impossible thing. Smoke does draw a line through air you cannot hold. Signed for delivery, she whispered, borrowing her mother's phrase. Everything arrived where it belongs. The candlelight made the room soft. Shadows gathered in the corners not to hide but to listen. She poured barley tea and took the first sip as if it were a vow. Tomorrow would need ordinary chores, the grocery list, the laundry, the endless small laws of continuing. Tonight, completion had a sound, paper shifting under the weight of a receipt. An envelope sign closed the last ember of incense surrendering to dark. Later, the siblings met on a group call. That sounded like the old kitchen voices over clinks and the occasional laugh that embarrassed itself and stayed anyway. They didn't talk about money. They talked about the persimmon tree, about a loose tile at the shelter, about how Sujin had started bringing extra spoons to every gathering just in case. Someone always will, she quoted, and they all smiled like complicit thieves who had stolen their mother's best line. Before they hung up, Yoon-jung read the last paragraph of the letter again, slowly, in the way their mother used to read bus schedules, as if recitation itself could make the world arrive on time. If you argue, remember this: the houses were never mine. I only kept them until you were brave enough to keep each other. Silence followed, not empty but full. Chairs creaked, a kettle poured, a window latch clicked, the audible life of homes that had learned, finally, to be kept. Good night, Yoon-jung said. "Good night," everyone answered, almost in unison, the closest thing to a prayer this family knew. And somewhere above the city, where steam from rooftops meets the colder air and turns visible the place, children point and call clouds something like a blessing rose and unraveled, then stitched itself again, persistent as breath. Chapter 5. The Forged Testament. March arrived like a letter that had been delayed, creased, unfamiliar, yet bearing the right address. At Malsun's home, the shelter walls smelled of new paint and sea air drifting from the nearby harbor. The staff had added curtains sewn from donated fabrics, and the children had started naming the rooms after colors. The yellow room was for newcomers, the green for study, the blue for sleeping. Yoon-jung came every Saturday with groceries and small lessons. How to register a child for school, how to write a complaint letter to a landlord, how to cook barley soup without bitterness. When she laughed, the sound had changed. It had an echo now, as if her mother were laughing from a neighboring room. Myung-ho visited less but sent boxes, books, towels, notebooks, the sorts of items that keep dignity from fraying. Soo-jin managed the accounts with military precision. Kil-soo fixed everything that broke: faucets, shelves, hearts, in roughly that order. The family's group chat, once a courtroom, had become a bulletin board of ordinary miracles. The shelter got new mattresses. Sejun is helping with tutoring. The persimmon tree is blooming early this year. Peace, that elusive tenant, seemed ready to sign a long lease until the letter arrived. It came folded in half, plain envelope, no sender. The postmark was from Seoul, but that meant little. Yoon-jung found it in her mailbox on a Thursday morning. Inside a single sheet, typed, unsigned. Be advised, a forged document concerning your mother's estate exists. Check the land registry of House 2. Someone who owes her honesty. At first, she thought it was a scam. There were always people who preyed on grief. But something about the phrase "owes her honesty" clung like perfume. Her mother had once said that lies are debts that collect interest. That night she couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., she texted Myung-ho a photo of the note. "Probably nothing," she wrote. "Or everything," he replied within a minute. "Meet tomorrow?" "Yes." "Bank first, then registry." The next morning, the sky looked like paperwork, white, endless, smudged with gray. At the district office, the clerk printed the property file. 2 copies of the will were on record, the notarized family version filed after the funeral, and another, dated 1 week earlier, with only one signature, Kim Mal-sun, and one beneficiary, Kim Myung-ho. The clerk frowned. This second one was submitted by courier but rejected, no witness stamp. "It's marked invalid." "But yes, it's there." Yoon-jung stared at the page. "Invalid or not, who submitted it?" "Courier didn't leave ID," the clerk said. "But the receipt shows a pickup from your brother's office address." She turned toward him slowly. "Your office?" He blinked, honestly bewildered. "I didn't send anything. Someone must have used my letterhead." "Who would do that?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted toward the window, where rain had begun its patient rehearsal on the glass. "Someone who thought they were helping me." Back at her apartment, Yoon-jung laid both wills side by side on the kitchen table. Same format, same paper, same pen stroke on the signature, but one detail refused to match. The forged version carried a flourish at the end of Mal-sun, a loop she had never used except when signing Christmas cards. Her mother had told her once, laughing, "Even liars are artists." You can see where they practiced. She took a magnifying glass and traced the line. The ink thickened near the end, like someone unsure of pressure. Soo-jin joined that evening. "You're sure it's not hers?" "Absolutely." She signed carefully, slow. "This is younger, rushed." Soo-jin squinted. "You think it was him? Maybe back when he panicked?" Yoon-jung shook her head. "No, he would have done it cleaner." Soo-jin half smiled. What a thing to say about forgery. "Still," Yoon-jung said, "we have to tell the others." They gathered the next night at Mal-sun's home, the only place large enough for both family and conscience.